All right, so as we start digging into DAX measures, the most natural place to start is with these basic math and stats and aggregator functions. So, usual suspects here, you see your sum, average, max, min, and a one that might be new to you called divide, which I'll talk about in just a second. These, for the most part, really speak for themselves. Very straightforward here. Sum, it just evaluates the sum of a column. Syntax wise, all you have to do is point to a column name containing values. Similar story here with average. This just returns the arithmetic mean of all of the numbers within a column. And again, same syntax here, just pointing average towards a column. Now for max, this obviously returns the largest value, but you don't have to just point it to one column. You could also feed a max function a list of scalar or specific values, and max will find the largest within that list. Same goes for min. It's the same exact syntax, it just returns the smallest value. And then divide. So this performs division, but it also includes the option for an alternate result, which is kind of like your value if error, kind of baked right into the formula. All right, so here we've got our numerator, our denominator, and then our alternate result. So really straightforward, no surprises here. Let's head on over to Power BI and we'll practice some of these hands-on. All right, so one of the things to remember here is that measures can really be added from a bunch of different places, right? So we left off here in the model view, and you can see that we can create new measures right from the model view here by selecting a table. From the data view here, we can also create new measures. And then finally, again, from the report view, you have a couple of different places within the report view, home tab, modeling tab. You can right-click tables. Again, we've got a bunch of different options here and ways that you can create measures. For the purpose of this course, let's try to get in the habit of creating measures right here within the report view. And we're going to do that directly within the measures table. So we can select this table and we're going to add a new measure here. And we're going to kick this off using a basic sum function. And first up here, we're going to create a new measure for quantity returned. Right, and this is going to equal our sum function, right? We add in our parenthesis, shift and enter down for a new line. Just one argument here, one parameter, that column name, right? So here we want to look at the sum of our returned quantity from the returns table, right? So we can start typing in returns to get to our returns data table and then type in return quantity. And then we'll close our parentheses, hit enter. All right, so we've locked that in and you can see that we have our quantity returned that's been added into our measures table. All right, so everything looks good there. But keep in mind, the only way to actually see the result of this measure is to visualize it, right? To pull it into the value fields of some sort of visualization, whether it's a matrix or a chart or whatever kind of visual you're using. So for instance here, if I wanted to add a third column into this matrix view, I could come in here, come down to values, we'll add data, and then we've got our measures table here, and we'll click on our quantity returned measure. And now we can see the quantity returned for each of our years, along with our order quantity and our sum of order quantity implicit measure. Thinking about our data model, right, this is a valid view, right? We're looking at our quantity returned by our start of the year. So this is coming from our calendar table, and we have that calendar table date column that's attached to our return date and the return data table. So again, this is a valid view. So at this point, looking at this visual, you might be thinking, hey, couldn't I have just gone in and added the returned quantity column from my returns data table? You're right, we could have. It would have returned the same result. And this is where it's vitally important to remember the difference between implicit and explicit measures. Right? Dragging that returns column into this chart creates an implicit measure that can't be used anywhere else. Right? It's only confined to this chart. But my quantity returned explicit measure can be used as a component within another measure, like return rate, for example. So what I'm going to do here to kind of clean up this visual is we're going to remove our implicit measures. So we'll delete the sum of quantity returned, and then I'm also going to delete the sum of order quantity here. So now I'm left with my two explicit measures for order quantity and quantity returned. All right, so up next, we're going to create another measure, and this time I want to use average. And for this measure, what we want to look at is our average retail price, right? and our average function, right? Again, we need a single column here. And this time the column is going to come from our product lookup table, right? So there's a couple of ways that you can start searching for different columns or values or measures within your data set. So you could start by typing in the product name. Additionally, you could start typing in something like price, right? And that's going to give you the two columns that are contained within our whole data model right now. So discount price or product price. So we want to do average of product price from the product lookup table. Shift enter, close our parenthesis, hit enter to lock this in. So we've got our average product price measure here set to our currency format with a comma, right? So everything looks good. And now similarly, let's go ahead and we'll add average retail price into our matrix so we can actually see the result that it returns. Remember, there's no other way that you can see the actual values that are returned until you add it into that visual. So we see here that we have a repeating value here, right? This average retail price. It's the same for all of the years, right? And that's because all we're doing is we're saying, hey, take a look at the average retail price for each of these years and then just return that. Right, so while this isn't super helpful information specifically for the average retail price, the real purpose of creating these measures is to be able to answer questions that are being asked about the business and to create exploratory and explanatory reports and dashboards. So instead of having this matrix be broken down by our year hierarchy or this date hierarchy, let's remove this. And what if we broke this matrix down by our category name, right? So from the lookup, look at our category name. And now this becomes much more interesting, right? So you can see for our accessories, our order quantity, our quantity returned, and then our average retail price for our accessories. Our total average retail price of $714 is still the same. But here we can see, okay, our average retail price for our accessories is just under $35. Average for bikes is about $1,500. For clothing, it's about $50. Right, so we have this components category here with an average retail price of $432, but we can see that we don't have any returned or sold items as part of this category. So again, we're starting to get some pretty interesting insights already just by changing out that date field into something like category name. Again, kind of thinking back to the use case here, as an analyst for AdventureWorks, which is a retailer, it's highly likely that a company would want to understand the performance of each of their different product categories in this way. So the other really powerful part here that we can do is you can actually add additional fields to kind of create a hierarchy or a way to kind of explore up and down between multiple levels. So let's say we wanted to add in something like our product subcategory name, right? And you can see that this view doesn't initially change. We just get this little plus mark to the left-hand side of each category name. And what this is telling us is that there's an additional field here, right? So if I were to click off this visual and I didn't have that kind of card building visual context, if I come up here, I have these drill down or drill to the next level in the hierarchy tools. So let's say I wanted to expand down to my subcategory name. I can now see my quantity ordered, returned, and my average retail price by each one of these individual subcategories. If I drill back up, I could use this option to expand down one level in the hierarchy. So now I get a nice, clear, logical grouping where I can see accessories and then all of the subcategories within the accessories category. Same thing for bikes, clothing, and then down here to components. Thinking about components, some of these are probably part of other products that are being sold, like our bikes. Right? We might not be selling bottom brackets or chains or brakes or things like that independently, and they might be part of a different order or part of like selling a bike or a package like that. It's just really cool that very quickly you can start to get some interesting insights and start doing some exploratory analysis like this pretty quickly within Power BI. So we're going to talk a lot more about how these visuals work and the tools that are available within the report view a bit later on. So again, more on that to come. All right, so with that, let's wrap up this lecture on creating measures using basic math and stats functions.